Hey, Social Psych. So today, I want to talk to you a little bit about the story of Kitty Genovese. Kitty was about your age or so, maybe a little bit older. In 1964, she lived in New York City, near Kew Gardens, if you know where that is. And late one summer night, she was walking home from work, probably about 10:30 or so. And as she walked along, someone came out of the darkness and attacked her. They stabbed her. It was a man. And she began screaming for help, and the man was afraid that she might recognize him maybe, or that she would call the police, and so he ran away. But she was very badly injured, and so she lay there on the ground next to a building, bleeding, and she was hurt badly enough that she was not able to get to her apartment. And of course she had screamed for help when this had happened, and no one had come. After a while, when he saw that the police had not been called, he became afraid that she might be able to identify him, and so he came back and continued the attack. And once again, she was able to scream for help, and he became afraid again and ran away. And after a while, when the police still hadn't come, he came back and he finished what he had started. Now the next morning, the police were there, and they were going through the neighborhood, and they were talking to everybody who lived in the area, and they were asking them, did you see anything about 10:30 last night? Did you hear anything? Which is typical in this kind of investigation. And I'm looking at my notes as people would tell them what they had heard, what they had seen. And ultimately, the numbers have been somewhat disputed over the years. But the general number that I have typically heard is that when they were asked, did you see anything? Did you hear anything? Yes, I heard someone screaming for help. Well, what did you do? Well, 38 people said nothing. I did nothing. Why not? Why didn't you call? And each one of them said, I didn't want to get involved. Let's just sit with that for a second. I did not want to get involved. Now, to be fair, back in those days, it wasn't 911. You didn't have easy access. If you even had a phone, there was not easy access to call law enforcement. You had to know the actual number of your precinct. And this was a neighborhood where there were quite a few people who were LGBTQ. And at the time, the police department wasn't terribly friendly to people who were lesbian or gay or bisexual. And so if you called the police, you might find yourself in danger as well. So, I mean, there were some extenuating circumstances, but still, as Kitty Genovese, who herself was gay, lay there dying, people heard her cry for help and did nothing. Now, this is not the first time this had happened. It had happened many times before. But for some reason, this particular case caught the attention of the media and the newspapers and the radio and to some extent the television. What is happening? What is going on? Man's inhumanity to man. Well, actually, it was man's inhumanity to woman, but you know the general thing. So there was an awful lot of uproar about this particular case. Now, what's interesting about social psychologists is that we tend to pay attention to the media. We read the newspaper, we watch the news, because these are the kinds of things that we study. And so there were two social psychologists who heard all of this uproar about Kitty Genovese's murder, and why did this happen? And they looked at each other and they said, well, let's find out, because that's what we do. And their names are Darley and Latney. So keep reading and you'll find out more about them.